I'm still working right now, so
Okay.
no video yet.
Cool, man.
That's it.
How you doing, Pete?
Doing all right. I'm hanging in there, catching up on the quizzes, and I got some extra credit to turn in because
Cool. Sounds good.
no, I dropped behind on some of the quizzes. So,
Cool.
oh hey, I looked up the Unspoken movie. I was trying to find it, and I couldn't find it anywhere. I checked. I checked Hulu. I checked YouTube. And I just started doing internet searches. I found a horror movie called The Unspoken, but
Really?
It's a PBS video.
Yeah, I just Googled
PBS.
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you just
That's just on their website?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll look that
so
up.
if you just Google Unspoken Boarding Schools.
It's like Unspoken Native American Boarding Schools is the official title.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah,
Then
that
it'll go. It's a PBS. So
Cool.
and bam. All right, cool. So
Sweet. I got a screen grab of it.
yeah, it's 56 minutes. So we're definitely worth a watch.
Wait, and then we just have to write about that or like type it up or something?
No, actually, no. I'm purposely took out some assignments this semester to hopefully you guys will enjoy the course more instead of be worried about. So yeah, I typically would have maybe one or two more writing assignments, something along this, but you did a quiz on it, so I'm still keeping the rigor. I think enough, but I just definitely took a lot of the writing. So you don't have to write on this. You will have an opportunity, however, to write later. So we'll talk about that. And all right, so let me finish my spiel, and then we'll talk about it. Then we'll just finish with the discussion. So we're talking about Americanizing the Indian or the Indian problem in our book. It's the textbook for the course, The First People, and watching the movie. So hopefully if you have that, you'll get a lot more out of this. That's the point. So the education was ultimately the panacea, the cure-all for the Indian problem. And it served two purposes. So the first purpose was to dismantle the family. That was always the goal of American policymakers. So child separation is a policy America knows all too well. It's not nothing new. And so you would take the children out before they could learn the language, learn the culture, all those things that were bad for you. And this would hasten cultural assimilation. Makes it go. It's like how you, it's like if you don't have a problem to begin with, right? Think of it that way. So Carlisle was officially the first boarding school, although there was before that. I think the first boarding school was like the 60s, but you know how dates are. They always try to say the first one, and it's hard to find. But Carlisle would be like the flagship Pennsylvania boarding school. So this was what Merle Gates said in his speech on the Indian problem. Let me change my grammar real fast. Always bugs me. Okay. We must, as rapidly as possible, break up the tribal organization to give them law, common with the family, land and severalty. Like I said, private property, break up the family, put them on private property. We must not only give them law, but force it upon them. We must not only offer them education, we force education upon them. Education will come to them by complying with the forms and requirements of the law. So it was a forced, that's one way to look at it too. Boarding school was a forced education. So, but here's the point, and Luis talked about it before, is why was he making these arguments to begin with? And so in 1885, this was the beginning of the so-called Dawes Act. So the Dawes General Allotment Act of 1887, Dawes was a person, so it's named after him, like Obamacare, so on and so forth, named after their names, but it's really called the Allotment Act. It's the single most devastating federal policy of the United States, and it was devastating. The goal ultimately was to break up reservations into small individual plots of land to individual Indians. So that's the simplest. If I were to give a definition of what the Allotment Act, that's all it is: to break it up into small checkerboard pieces to individual lands, give them individual title, and ultimately this would make the reservations go away. So if there's no more land held in common, there's no more reservation. So, and this is something natives don't realize, and they should, is that the reservation was never meant to be permanent, which is important when you live on one. So you know the history behind it. So what it looks like is this. So the Allotment Act is, so yeah, I'll just give you the brass tacks, those little squares, right? So tribal, that's communal property.
Ethan, can I interrupt you? Could you put
Yes.
your PowerPoint into full view so this will be bigger and more visible?
That sounds good.
Well, it didn't make it that much bigger. Oh, it's bigger.
All
So
right,
I
yeah.
can see those checkerboards. Thank you.
No, yeah, great idea on this one especially, right? Okay, so so the moral of the story is this. You could read all that stuff on the right later if you want, but it's this. So fee simple is an English term, right? The white blocks, and that's what I'm on. I live in El Cajon. It's a fee simple or trust deed property. So these are all English terms from English law. That's why sometimes you're like, what the hell does this word mean? Fee? I do. I trip out on words all the time. I guess it's just me sometimes. Allotted is the red part. That's for Indians. The white is, I guess it's fitting. The white is for the white people, right? So the white folks come in and they have their little white blocks, and then they take up all the reservation. And the red ones are the allotments, and the tribal is not allotted yet, right? The yellow, and reserve, I think those are to be allotted later. So this is in essence what allotment looks like, and the white part is when the reservations, you think of it like taken away, right? So they gave excess land to outsiders. And remember, that's what Merle Gates said, that you wanted white folks to settle next to Indians to teach them farming, teach them how to act, teach them civilization. So that was part of their colonial design, right? So they had all these weird ideas, and they really believed them, Merle Gates in particular. So, so the fee simple is just an English term. It's, the ownership, it's a vested interest, it's inheritable, and you own it, so you can also pass it on. So natives didn't really live like that. So I'm just trying to draw that difference. Okay, surplus land would be sold to whites to help the assimilation process. So assimilation was going to be helped by these white folks, or Mexican or black, that would live next to Indians, to show them how to farm, show them civilization, right? The other thing too, so one of the main parts of this is essential to the land idea, the private property and communal land idea, is citizenship. So as citizens of a tribal nation, you're a different country. That's what sovereign nation means. So this was all part of the conversation at this point. So they're wondering, how do we incorporate Native American people as citizens? So the Allotment Act was the first time they attempted any of this. And they conferred it up. You'd have to have it either your piece of property for 25 years or not. So they didn't know when you became a citizen? Is it when you get your allotment or 25 years later? If you think about 25 years, that's ridiculous, right? I mean, that's extremely that's basically they're kicking the can so far down the road, you're probably going to be dead, you know? So the whole 25-year thing is just that's just another dagger, you know, to the chest, you know, a little sucker punch when they did that, but they did that. So they tried to, just like the blacks and African Americans, they gave us citizenship and then took it away, right? So we weren't citizens until 1924, but this is just them flirting with the idea of citizenship. So the Dawes Act, head of the household will get 160 acres. So this is like a family of 4, like me, I would get 160 acres, which is quite a lot. But if you watch Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, like you did, Luis, he said 160 acres of this means nothing, right? In Pine Ridge. So you're talking about 160 acres that would no access to any water or any resource. So it's a lot of these allotments, and that's why we'll talk about Pine Ridge at the end of this course. The land is a wasteland. It's a wasteland would be the wrong word, but I can't think of a politically correct word, but it's where no one would choose to live, I guess I would say. Single person gets 80 acres. Merle Gates, again, this whole white farmer, like, you know, farmers teaching us how to live is from the Spanish. Okay, when they talk about the mission period, this is what they say. They taught us agriculture. They taught us how to farm. So it's just this whole colonial thing in general for colonizers versus an indigenous people. They just they think farming is so important. I think that would be on a list like number 3 or 4, in addition to citizenship and landholdership. It would be this idea of farming, or because if not, you're out running wild with the buffalo, right? So what the farmer does is it settles people, and that's what they more than anything wanted. They didn't want you cruising around too far, which now we're like, man, that's why we're all, you know, we need more activity, not less. So anyways, so, you know, Teddy Roosevelt commented, a mighty pulverizing engine to break up the tribal mass. So, you know, of course, he said that with a smile, right? So that's why I put it in there. I should have put him smiling, like he's all these people ever wanted. So 90 million acres sold to non-Indians. To put it in perspective, California has 100 million acres. So almost the size of California was stolen again from Native Americans with the Dawes Act, right? And did we know what it meant? Did we know what it was? Half of us probably still didn't speak English, right? A lot of us didn't speak English for quite a while, until 2 generations ago. Our elders didn't even speak the language, English language. So you can imagine all the deceit and lies and deception that went in every single acre of these 90 million acres. So this is why, you know, this is a big deal when it comes to this course in general. Never forget the Dawes Act and what it did to us. Not us in particular. I can talk about the local things you want. So 118 of 214 reservations have been allotted. Disastrous economic and cultural consequences. So yeah, I guess I can briefly. So the reservations, all the reservations here are allotted, except for Barona and Tejas, because we were made after 1934, because they kicked us out for the dam. But like for instance, I have a property. Let me just stop this little sharing for a second first. So I'll tell you the little local story real fast. So I have an allotment, right? So my dad died in 2018, August 2018, and I think I have an allotment in Pechanga and La Jolla, right? And here's what an allotment is. It's like this is why I want to go into comedy. So an allotment is this: put it this way, there's about 40 people who own this thing, right? Or 50 people. So what happens is, as someone dies, it gets broken down to all their kids, right? And then when those people die, it goes to their kids and their kids and their kids. So it's like that, the Wayne's World part. and they tell two people, and they tell two people. So what happens is at this point, it's like, I'm like wondering if I should even do it, if it's even worth it, anything, because what we would have to do is get together and sell it. So basically, to me, in summary, it's all this, it's so terribly organized. You can't sell it. You can't really do anything. What if I wanted to live there? I'd have to go talk to every 50 people, all those 50 people. So there's so many problems with the allotment. But, you know, Saquon, for instance, Hank Murphy, my cousin, I interviewed him. That was on his allotment. I think you, Luis, knew about Mesa Grande. They were allotted, right? What's his name? Panchetti? Panchetti. Yeah.
Yes, Ken Ponchetti.
Ken Panchetti.
Well, he was not on an allotment, though.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the local story isn't as exciting, but it is here, you know, and that's something no one talks about enough. But so yeah, but the thing is that this, like I said, the unfortunate thing is it's so poorly designed. It's like makes worthless. The land becomes worthless almost, if especially if you want to do something, economic development, whatever. So again. So when you see these policymakers and they think they're so smart, it's like, well, history will judge us all. That's all I got to say. So here's the Rosebud Reservation, right? To give an example, same idea. Look at the allotments. Look at the allotted is the red. The white is the settlers, the people that are non-Indians in there. You know, an Indian made this, by the way, right? The red squares are red, and then the white. Oh, this is pretty damn funny. And then tribal reserve. But here's the thing. So, I mean, look, when you see a map, you don't see this, right? You see the whole thing is full, right? But no one ever really zooms into the 1,000-foot level to see. And these reservations, so these are the Sioux, right? The Rosebud is one of the Great Lakota Nation reservations. Another extreme example is Agua Caliente. So this is Palm Springs, right? So whenever you see this on a map, now you'll know why. So look at the checkers. So Agua Caliente is the brown. So they started out with the whole thing, right? And then over time it got bought or change hands, but it didn't start out this way. So and unfortunately maps don't show this sometimes they have to, like Morongo or Agua Caliente. It's like it's an absolute checkerboard. Okay, so the other one is Fort Mojave and Needles. So this is where our creation comes from, the Kumeyaay. We actually come from the river, the Kumeyaay. So our creation stories say we came down the river like this. And as we went by, so like Quitson and certain people stopped, but our stories show us that we came from the river. But anyways, so yeah, so this is what allotment looks like. And so between the Allotment Act and boarding schools, we basically were devastated. So the boarding schools is another story, but so anyways, questions, comments on the movie, slides, anything? Yes.
I have one question on the allotment.
Yeah.
Where it was tribal land on the key for tribal, and assuming if this was Verona, that is still land that's held in common, right? So that's truly still is the reservation, because the allotment is not really part of the reservation anymore, correct? It's gone. A lot of piece of property might be surrounded by the reservation, but it's not in the reservation.
So Verona was created after, Verona's different. So we bought Verona because they paid us $360,000 for the El Capitan Grande. Right. So we purchased Verona after the Allotment Act. So Capitan Grande was allotted. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but in Capitan Grande we had allotments, and then well, let me show you. Actually, I could show you right now. So Capitan, we had allotments. And then now that we moved to Verona, it's not allotted, but all the other places are, like Sequan, La Jolla, all these other, let me just get that. I don't know. Did I answer your question?
I think my key question is the land that's defined as tribal still tribal and community property of the reservation?
For Verona?
Well, Sequan, anybody, even Rosebud.
Oh, no. So there's allotments on Sequan, and that's theirs. Like Sequan can't,
right.
Sequan has nothing to do with it.
But the rest of it is still communal property and reservation.
Yeah, just like you see the orange square,
Mm-hmm.
you know, there was red, white, orange, so that would be orange. So like Hank's spot would be red, and then Sequan would be orange. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I guess to answer your question, our reservations look the same as that one. But they don't, that's the problem. That's what I'm trying to say though. They don't show you on a map, like Sequan won't show you their allotments on a map ever, maybe at the tribal office. So we don't know. That's why it sucks being a scholar sometimes, a Kumeyaay scholar, because
remember, I found that one map, I forgot who it was, wasn't the BLM, that had some allotment in San Diego County. I put it in my paper when I did that.
yeah.
And it was kind of bizarre. But my other question is, I'm going to lose it. So back to your property or anybody's allotment. So there's 40 people on it, but if you 40 people agreed, they could all give one person the title, right? I mean, it's totally independent, just like the piece of property I own, right? It's fee simple. So you could all agree to give your piece of the title to you, and then you could do whatever you wanted with it. Correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Just that 50 people could never agree.
Well, you know, to me, it's like, because I talked to my brother about it when my dad passed, and I'm like, dude, I don't even know if it's worth it, you know, because I mean, I just think of the freaking logistical nightmare, you know.
But is this the property that you grew up on with your dad that was allotted, or is this a different piece of property?
It's a property from my grandmother.
Yeah, different one.
Yeah, different one. I'm trying to share the allotment. Oh, that's why I have to end this PowerPoint. That's why. Stop sharing. So yeah, so let me show you what Cap 10 is, and then I'll show you Verona. So just to give you an example, because again, you don't find this stuff easily. And I swear, like, you know, we're just starting to keep good records, but you know, if something was done in the 60s or 70s, good luck. It's probably lost. I don't know what's up with this. Use presenter view. Okay. My thing's wigging out. Sorry. I'm trying to share this. Did I share it? No, that's not shared. Oh well. Anyways. So I can't find the allotment. Oh, here it is. Yes, I got it. Finally. Okay, so here's an allotment thing from Captain Grande. All right, let's see. It's kind of bad. It's kind of poorly done. So you see the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is the El Capitan. This would be the dam. This is underwater now. So the dam is like right here. You see my mouse? I don't know. Can you see my mouse thing?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then, well, I think my great grandmother and grandfather had a house right here, or it was right here where the schoolhouse was. The mission was right here. Then you go down across. But yeah, so this was our allotments, and then this is Viejos. This was the village of Los Conejos.
But
So
isn't this the one that this was their plan, but they never did it when the water board decided they would be foolish to give away all that river frontage?
So, yeah, they did it. So they allotted this, like they redid the map like 4 times, but it was allotted. But it didn't matter once the water came because it was underwater, right? So that's why when we moved to Verona, we started over. We didn't have allotments. So I guess we're blessed in a way, because allotments is a nightmare, right? So I'm sure some people will like it, but it's a nightmare. So yeah, so this is Viejas to the right. And we purchased our property in 1932 and 1934, or I think it was before that. So the Allotment Act had ended in 1934. So we kind of escaped that. And then, yeah, if I could show you a picture of Verona. Let me maybe see if I can.
That's a good one.
Oh, here's a good one. So this is yeah. So these are the allotment schedules. So these are all the folks that got allotments. I don't see any Benegases yet. See, because Benegases weren't here yet. We were still in Mesa Grande. The Cueros, and you see the acreage is interesting, right? So they didn't get 100. So in Pine Ridge and areas like that, they got 160 acres, 80 acres, but we only got 10 or 20 acres. So, and then there's Lost Woman, Guillermo. Just interesting to read the names for me. Capistrana, Pico, there's a Pico, Paipa, Osuna, Pena. And I think Penas are La Chapas. I think those are, there's Lechusa. Oh, that's how you spell it. So this is what Benegas, actually, look, that might be my great-grandfather, Lechusa. So yeah, so that means screech owl. So yeah, so this has been a really cool thing for me, because I'm like, I discovered basically a lot of, our family's history, and been able to help my family with a lot of questions. Yeah, that's it.
And Grande book?
Oh, you want to see it?
No, is this it? I have that book. I'm just
Yeah.
making sure it's what I have. Yeah.
Yeah, this is it. Yeah. So so we were allotted in 1895, right? I think that's the first allotment. And then, man, that's cool. I learned how to spell Lechusa. I was spelling it wrong. So and then they went through different iterations. So the other thing is the Smiley Commission came in, and they were the Smiley Commission was the one that put the four reservations into trust: Campo, La Posta, Huillapai, and Manzanita. So right around 1893. Oh, maybe this was the Smiley Commission. Yeah, so that might have been the Smiley Commission right there. But they kept changing it, though. So they kept redrawing the map. They forgot a certain portion. If you notice that river part at the top, they forgot that part in the beginning. So they added that allotment. And so the whole allotment history is very interesting. And the local story, I would say, isn't as devastating as the national story, which is that's kind of on theme with a lot of things. We got pretty dang lucky if you look at other tribes. Even our pieces of property were way better than like Pine Ridge, for instance. But I would say Manzanita would almost be in that Pine Ridge category where you're like, damn, that's just messed up. They put them there, and so, yeah, that might be interesting to show you a clip of Manzanita, because I've been talking about it so much. But it kind of reminds me of Pine Ridge, I guess. So anyways,
I think it's interesting to, I don't know if anyone saw the UT today or heard the news yesterday, but 2 Kumeyaay were arrested. Did you follow that?
No.
Because
that surprised me.
The Manzanita and the Campo, I'm not sure, I forget the name of it, the land camp. They've been protesting. They've been having prayers and ceremonies at the border where the wall is being built, and they're saying that these are their ancestral realms there based on the 1978, what's it called, the Indian Religious Act, that they have the right to be there. And the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, is building an extension and replacing the existing wall with the 30 feet. Anyway, they came up with I don't know if it's an executive order, but they came up with an order to close it yesterday at noon, but they didn't tell them until an hour before, whereas it was written on Friday. And two of the guys didn't leave. I'm not sure if it's guys or women. And so they arrested them. They released them. But anyway, if you go to the website, I'll put it in the chat if anybody wants to. There's an email of the public relations person for the BLM that you can write a note to and say, stop building this part of the wall, let them practice their ceremonies. And also they've got an injunction that is, they want them to stop all building until the injunction is reheard in December. I'll put that email if anybody wants to. But it's Manzanita, it's out in Manzanita area where you're talking.
Yeah, La Posta area, huh? It's like same, it's kind of the same area. But I saw there's something on TMZ, like this like tweaker lady. You see it?
No, I don't.
She came in. No, my wife showed me it was on the internet, but she came there and they were singing. She wanted to fight them, and they said no. And then they started singing, and then she started dancing. It was just outrageous.
Oh, I saw that. That's on their Instagram. Yes, it's horrible. She was hitting them. She actually slapped a woman. Yeah,
full on. I mean, and it's like I grew up in Lakeside, right, in El Cajon, so I know that kind of person all too well. And it's just interesting. It's too bad, but I'm proud of the natives for taking the high road and high ground, and because she wanted to fight them, and they said we're not fighting you, so that was cool. I really dug that. So so fantastic. And the boarding school thing, I'll just tell a little bit about that. I talked about allotments, and one of the thing about boarding school is for here is a lot of our people don't realize that what boarding school had done for us. For instance, maybe I should show the clip real fast. Yeah, let me show you. I'll show you the eldest member of Barona, sister. She went to a boarding school. But yeah, I think it's better just to, I was going to say what she said, but I'll just show you. And then that'll be a good one to end on. All right. So yeah, let me plug this thing in. All right. So as I said earlier, my grandfather went to St. Boniface. St. Boniface is one of two schools. St. Boniface was run by nuns. It was pretty intense. They didn't feed you well. I heard they didn't give you like the right size shoes, so you had little shoes, just stuff like that. But sister went to Sherman. So this is pretty cool. Let me just find the minutes real fast, so we can go straight to it. So yeah, so this was kind of my first one of my first interviews where I started to kind of discover the boarding school story around here, because no one really talked about it. And so, I knew the larger story, but not the local story. All right, let's see. Hold on, I'm just trying to find the minutes real fast. That would be okay, an hour. Got it. So sister is the eldest member of Barona, and she was a chairwoman for many years. No, not many. I think she just did one term, actually. And her son is the current chairman now, and she's with him. Thorpe is in the interview as well. Wait, hold on. Let me take out my headphones. Can you hear me? Can you hear the thing? Hold on. Let me take my headphones out.
Had electricity and electric shop, and they had we graduated from high school, and I graduated. My brothers all had to quit and go to work to help support the family, because we used to pool our money together just for the family. Because every time we worked, we used to give it to my mom. she was the bookkeeper, she was the bank, she was everything, you know, and she was the matriarch of the family, and everything was to her. I never looked to see a check or money, but if we wanted to go like to a show or something, she would go and let us go to the show and stuff, but she handled the finances. We never had our own finances like we do today.
True matriarch.
Yeah, true
You got
matriarch.
the money. You got the power right there.
Yeah,
So you went to, while we're on the subject, you went to Sherman when you were 12 or 11 for 6 years.
yes,
And that's in Riverside, and that's an Indian boarding school.
yes,
I have written down, it was a dormitory,
yes.
half vocational, half educational. It was segregated with the social hour, and there were no uniforms.
No, that's
Um,
right.
One thing I thought was interesting in our previous interview was that the Indians, Navajo knew their language. They would speak their language, but the California Indians didn't know their language
No.
at that point. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about your time at Sherman?
Well, I thought it was a wonderful school when I went. Of course, I got very homesick in the beginning, and they would come and pick us up in August and take us to school in a bus. And I was up there and I got very homesick. But the school, it was half a day you worked in the school, and the other half you went to school, book school, did some book work. And they had things there that I really liked. You could work in the kitchen, you could work in the bakery, you could work up at the hospital to learn, and they had a lot of things that you could learn. They taught you a lot of things that I think they were getting us ready for, not for college or any higher education, in order to be able to live and get a job. And for the men, vocational, more or less, yes. The men, they had electricity and electric shop, and they had, you had to go up, what do you call that, where they blow the whistles and stuff like that, and the mechanical stuff, you know, that they could do. And they had a tailor shop and different things for the men to do and different things for the women to do.
So auto shop?
Auto shop,
wood shop.
all that. They had that for the men. And for the ladies, they like I said, they had the cooking things to do, and the hospitals that you could go and learn, you know. And they had a lot of things for you to learn. Of course, I liked the cooking school. I liked the kitchen. I liked the bakery. We had a lot of good times in the bakery.
It almost sounds like they're preparing you for society.
They were.
You know, they took you off the reservation, put you in a bus, rode you to Sherman, and started preparing you for society.
Yes.
Introducing you to the world of the outside.
That's right.
And so get accustomed to it. That's where you're going to be, basically.
I thought it was wonderful.
Right?
Yeah, to civilize us.
That's my favorite word.
But it was.
You look at it, you know.
But to me, it was great because we had electric lights.
Right.
Here, we didn't have anything like that. We had electric lights. And I asked them one time, can you tell me where the lavatory is? I meant the bathroom. And they sent me way downstairs where there was washing machines and ironing boards and that's where they figured that you wanted to go to wash your clothes and dry them and iron them and everything, you know.
Yeah.
But to me, to go to the lavatory was the bathroom. And I still didn't know where it was. I had to keep going around till they finally understood what I wanted. And they would have dances on the weekends. They would have movies for you. As long as you were in good standing, that you didn't have any demerits or anything like that, you had to work those off or you wouldn't be able to go to these things. But they would have all that. And that was really, to me, great. Later on, when I went to different places, and they were asking about the terrible, and I imagine some probably had a terrible time going to school in these boarding schools. And they would ask you, raise your hand if you went to a boarding school. Well, I raised my hand, and they said, I want to know how, how did you fare out in the schools? Well, I couldn't tell them anything bad. To me, I thought, boy, Sherman was the thing to go to. You had all these things that you didn't have up here. And I couldn't raise my hand on those subjects because I didn't have anything bad. I thought it was fair. If you got a demerit, it's because you didn't do what you were supposed to do. They would check your rooms every day to see if you made your bed and stuff like that. And if you didn't, you deserve a demerit.
Yeah.
And I used to think that Sherman was the greatest thing. People got to speak their own language if they wanted to.
Yeah.
Outside they had to speak English when they went to school, but otherwise you'd see them on playtime or whatever. If they wanted to speak themselves, they would speak. Nobody would tell them they couldn't do it. We weren't forced to do anything except go to school and be on time for whatever we were supposed to do. So I liked Sherman, and therefore I stayed there until I graduated. But I've heard of horrible things that happened to other people in the boarding schools, and they speak of it all being bad. But to me, it was not bad. Sherman was a good place. And it was for the California Indians at that time. Then they took it away from the California Indians and gave it to the Navajos. We weren't allowed to go there anymore. At that time, I had graduated, though, but later on, those that went couldn't go there anymore because they took it away from California Indians and gave it to the Navajos.
Really?
Yeah, everything was political, and didn't get that.
Boarding school is a different way of life. You have to adapt.
Right.
And you have to look at your surroundings and adapt to the different cultures and the different Native Americans that are going there and talking their languages. And so it's uncertainty when you first go to a boarding school because you don't know how to change this. I'm speaking from experience. I'm also a product of a boarding school.
You went to Sherman as well?
No, I went to St. John's
St. John.
in Arizona.
Okay.
And actually, I think Sherman might have had better dormitory than St. John's
I cried
did.
all the way home after I left him there.
It was, at first, it was strange. I was the only one there from California.
Yeah, so it was interesting because, like I said, the local boarding schools never said. You couldn't get it, right? Unless your grandma or someone went to it. And so you can imagine, like, as I'm researching this stuff and I'm like, okay, this needs to be answered, this needs to be answered, this needs to be answered, and on. And then 3 years later, that's what I was after. So I went out and interviewed everyone and anyone, asked them, hey, do you know about boarding schools? Do you know about this? Do you know about that? On and on. So I now, thank God, I feel like we understand a little bit more through some of the research I've done. But basically, when this was one of the first interviews I did, and I couldn't believe it when she said it was a good experience, right? Because especially if you watch Unspoken, hopefully you did or you will. It's like contradictory beyond measure, right? So that made me even more hungry. Like, okay, we're onto something. Because you can't. That's what really bothered me to begin with. Is you say, oh, Native America went through this. It's like, well, we're in California. We're Kumeyaay. We have a unique, different experience, extremely unique. And boarding school is one of them. However, there were instances where I interviewed George Prieto. He's the eldest member of Sequan. She is the eldest member of Barona. George said it was terrible. He was always hungry. So, that he was kind of beyond, his memory was pretty poor, but he remembered that. And that was St. Boniface, where my grandfather went. So my grandfather, St. Boniface was the bad one. Sherman was the good one. Sherman had money. You actually went to Disneyland when you were good, on good behavior, right? So you're talking about an outlier. You know, Sherman's the outlier that makes everyone confused. But that'd be cool to be a part of that outlier and not the normal experience. So there was a local boarding school experience. It remains to be really seen to the extent of it. We would need more like testimonials and stuff. But I can tell, like I said, my grandfather and stuff, maybe that was why, you know, things turned out the way they did in my family. Maybe it was because of boarding schools, right? I mean, my family we didn't fare very well, you know, and my grandfather and a lot of people went to boarding schools, and, you know, so it's just a testament to the larger narrative, which is to Americanize us, to destroy us and make us anew, right? So the boarding school, like the Allotment Act, was the most devastating policy socially. You would say the Allotment Act is a social act as well, but, you know, if you put all these variables together, the Allotment Act, boarding schools, you know, killing our buffalo so we can't hunt anymore, you know, taking away our lives and forcing us to be farmers. But here's what happened, you know, so here's the end of the story, is the American government promised us a better way of life, a better way, period. A better culture, a better language, a better education. Everything was better. But what we come to find is it wasn't. And you destroyed something without putting it back. So that's how I would describe Native Americans today. You destroyed us, and I'm talking about the government, and we were never put us back to original form. But you promised us, you know. And so it ended up, you know, the end result is what we're going to talk about with historical trauma. So I'm kind of setting the table now for that discussion, so you'll already be there when we get it, and then we'll talk about historical trauma in depth. And that's what I was talking about with the Somalian community, Ruin, and that I'll be doing work with, hopefully, if the grant goes through, because this is what happens to folks who come to America and think they're going to be better off by throwing off all of who they are and starting over. And what's going to happen is you're not going to be better off, you're going to be worse. And so as a country, you know, we need to truly value diversity and culture, and not want everyone to be the same, right? I mean, look, we're destroying the biodiversity of the world at this moment, right? Did you see that new report on biodiversity? How we're at the brink, and that's where we are. So diversity is what saves us, literally what saves the human race. And I would say it saves us on a spiritual level, keeping us accepting and loving our differences, right? Not making everyone Christian and everyone this way and everyone that way. And so I think the moral of the story can be applied to other communities, right? To the Somalian community. All these lessons are something that we've gone through and went through it, and like, don't do that, right? So don't lose your originality and what made you unique and special as a distinct person. So that's kind of the moral of the story, just to kind of give you the end of the story right now. But we're going to talk about that with historical trauma, and, you know, what it means, and basically why I'm doing this. So that's largely what gets me out of bed every morning and allows me to push on, is I know I really want to help people, especially Native people, or you don't got to be Native, period, to learn from our experiences. And basically too, the last thing I'll say is this, you know, America is at a crossroads right now. We really need this dialogue, you know, this, like, because it's so polarized. It's like, you got to pick a side. But even yesterday, I had to pick, I was Democrat again, or else I couldn't vote for certain Democrats. But I don't want to pick, I almost want to be like, I don't know, the stupid Green Party or something. But we're in this world where it's such a polar, and this is kind of what you were saying, Pete, is we're
independent.
Independent, yeah. Well, you know what? I should have picked independent, but it's like, but I hate the fact that we got to always pick a side. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I'm just not like that. And I think that's when you really start to learn, is when you don't pick sides. You know, when when you act like you know something, it's like that's when you stop learning. And so all this stuff. Anyways, I'm going off on a tangent. So 10 minutes, it's on you. I'm done.
I had a
Speaking
question.
of picking sides. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Ladies first.
I have a question about the movie that I watched.
Yeah.
So the lady in the video, she was talking about how she went to Sherman, right?
Yeah.
But in the movie, they said that Sherman had like these jails, and then they recently found like handcuffs for children. But I don't understand how like the stories from the movie were talking about how bad it was and how horrible the treatment was there, but then she was talking about how it was like a good experience for her.
She was one of the ones that adapted.
What'd you say?
She was one of the ones that adapted.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't a common thing it wasn't like a good experience overall. It was just her own, the way that
I might jump in on this.
Sherman started in 1901, so it changed over that time. It's still open. So she was there later.
Yeah.
To me, though, Ethan, it's still, when you say it was the good one, I still can't say that because it still was about dismantling the family and making people assimilate. So it's, they may have been nicer and they weren't at that stage using handcuffs. But
yeah, Disneyland, right?
Right. So I'm not sure, Ron, what year that was. I saw the movie too, what year those handcuffs were, but the school opened in 1901, so
yeah,
it could have been earlier.
Yeah, and it evolved big time with the different BIA, Bureau of Indian Affairs superintendent, like Collier and all these. Like, so yeah, the time period varied drastically especially from the beginning would have been probably the worst, right? Maybe that's probably what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And she went in like the 40s so you're talking about,
yeah,
it's a whole new world really. So, but I just think, yeah, you're right though. Like the moral of the story is boarding schools were all bad, no matter what the experience was, right? So anyways, yeah.
I would say just, again, this is an interpretation. This is not necessarily a fact from place, but children were viewed very differently back in 1901 and all the way through the First World War, Depression, Second World War, all that. When they were, I can't remember what year the Industrial Revolution was, but I mean, child labor laws didn't come into effect for quite a while after that. And children were viewed as small adults. So the good ones were rewarded, those that were responsible and did, made their bed, and the tasks were simple. But those that did well in that and fit the form and adapted, as it were, or assimilated, whatever you want to call it, they were rewarded fairly heavily or fairly. But those that did not fit the mold, or those that weren't as adaptive, were, I mean, across the race board, were pretty heavily persecuted, whether it was beaten or, but not necessarily stockades. But when you go past that, the Native American kids in the in the boarding school would just be a more extreme version of whatever the kids around that time period were receiving as far as discipline or correction or whatever. Because it was going to be unmonitored as far as, I don't know what the monitoring was on boarding schools, but it sounds like at first they weren't very.
Yeah.
Am I anywhere near?
Yeah, it was. Well, the boarding school was also similar to the foster care system, where they would just take kids and put them in foster care. So they did that for a while, and then they had an act for the child, NICWA, Native American Child Act, where you can't remove kids and put them in like white families or non-Indian families. You have to put them in an Indian family, and that stopped them from just taking kids and putting them in white families. So you got to see the boarding school as a form of child separation against one's will, and so it was to hasten the assimilation process. So it was truly a nefariously designed, on purpose, child separation from And then a lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
times the kids would want to leave, or the parents would want to. You'll see in the movie, I think, that you couldn't get them out. So it was also like it was like a form of incarceration as well, to some extent. So there are some similarities certainly with children at the time, like working in a factory at 8 years old. Certainly, the culture was different, right? I don't think we even had mandatory school yet. That wasn't until later to make sure to lower the reason why they did that. In fact, to your point, they made school mandatory to make the unemployment rate change, go down. Did you ever hear that one? That, I swear to God. So whenever you think of high school and all that, a lot of it is just to make that unemployment rate go down, so those folks can't be out there taking jobs. Isn't that so hilarious? So that's how crazy like history is. When you really find out some of this stuff, you're like, come on, it's like, anyways. But yeah, so
hey man, child labor laws aside, I've been working since I was 12, man.
yeah, I'm gonna put my kids at work. They'll probably change their attitude. So the boarding schools, we can go on and on, but consider this course just like a small meal every class. So I'm only going to give you a little bit, so you have an idea, and we're going to move on. So it's kind of the cool and the bad part about being a macro, right? You can't stay micro too long. You got to keep moving. So anyway, next week we're going to go on to more the Battle of Little Bighorn, Sitting Bull, like the iconic Plains Indian thing where everyone now stereotypes us that we got to be like, you know what I mean? So that's kind of where we're going next, which is cool and exciting. There's a reason why it's been overdone, because it's pretty cool. But this book, so this author I'm trying to pick stuff that I hope, you eventually keep going, maybe read the whole book one day, because it's a really good author, really good book. And it kind of talks about Custer and who he was and all that. And then we're just going to move on and not stay there too long. So please do the reading, do the quiz, read the preface. So it says 1 through 25, but read the preface too. So there's like 7 pages in the preface. So the preface is really good. And then that will be next month or next week. And then we'll be talking about occupation of Alcatraz after that. So we'll start getting to the resistance stuff. Like probably my cousins are doing over, it's probably them that got arrested yesterday. So we never stop resisting as people, because you gotta fight the man, right? That's what rock and roll is all about. So sticking it to the man, Pete. Rune, you gotta stick it to the man.
So interesting to me, because I'm viewing both sides of that. My boss is actually working as a drone pilot, filming and mapping the entire wall project.
Yeah.
So he's down all the way from Otay to Calexico.
Well, here's the problem. The problem is not the wall. It's how they're doing it. They're not.
Right.
They're not.
Absolutely. And so it's really interesting to stand on one side and be like, okay, this needs to get pushed through, and that's how they're doing it. And then the other side of it is, dude, you're pushing it through, and you're just bulldozing. What?
Well, think about.
I don't know how to fix that, but
here's what we think about. There could be a village under that wall that was like one of our main villages that was never discovered, right? Or it could be an entire graveyard of like 500 ancestors that you just dug up because you didn't give a shit. So that's that's how
horrible thing.
Yeah.
Here's a statement. A horrible thing. I've had construction bosses tell me, if you find pottery or bones or anything, dude, you don't say a word.
That doesn't
bury it, get rid of it. And I went, really? And they go, yes, because they will shut our entire project down. And I went, okay. Now I'm not doing that side of it anymore, but I've had bosses tell me that, because all they're worried about is their timeline and their schedule. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I have firsthand experience with that, but
and here's
looking at both sides is just, I don't know.
Here's what sucks about that in particular. Okay, we found this mastodon, right, that dates us to 130,000 years old, the Kumeyaay people. And they're not going to believe that, because we can't find multiple sites that put us here 130 years ago. And then I think about people like that guy and this guy and these construction guys. they probably dug up 10 of these damn mastodons without giving a crap. And how important is that to like antiquity, to history, to humanity? Like, because this is the story of man and woman, right? It's not.
Yeah.
So we're losing like incredible data that would shape our minds for almost like space does, you know? And so that's the push and pull between,
and
I guess,
the
money.
question is, how do you sequence it?
What's that?
How do you sequence it such that you can actually harvest the data and allow projects and societies and so forth to move forward with what they need to do to, you know, build or whatever they're doing. I don't have an answer. I've got lots of questions.
I don't either. I don't got the answer either.
Well, actually, there is an answer to that. The Kumeyaay have what they call cultural monitors. Well, the whole U.S. does. And it comes, I believe, out of that Indian Religious Act of 1978.
Yep.
There's one, there's a number. And when they find something, like you were mentioning, they are supposed, the project coordinators are supposed to call and identify it. And then these cultural monitors go out there. Now, they're going to slow the project down. That's why people don't want it to happen. But they then find those things. They collect them. Some of them go to the, well, Ethan might know more of this, but there's a whole controversy about what happens to when they find them. But they then get stored and have to determine, was it Campo or Verona, who they go to. But there is a process and it's all there, and that's what they're asking for. They're not saying you could never build a wall. They're saying, let us do this. But they don't want to stop at the moment.
Nope.
That's
can't stop production.
Because there's a way, it's just they don't want to stop.
Nope. Yeah. Once they coordinate that and they get it going, well, the construction ball is rolling. They don't.
But they can't.
Stopping that is
and that's why the Kumeyaay appealed it, and it's an appeal now. So to be reheard in December, and they're just asking, I believe, if I understand it, that they stop work until the December hearing.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Yeah, it's too bad because what Trump did with his executive order was he made it to where you don't have to have cultural monitors and all that. So it's not
right. He tried to streamline it.
We don't oppose the wall. That's fine, but just do it right. And that's something in Native people, like, you know, that's the whole Manifest Destiny culture thing, right? Where now, fast, progress, boom, boom, boom. You don't take time. You got to keep going, or you get behind, right? And I showed that commercial. We don't go on.
It's all relative too.
Yeah, so it is. I don't consider it a class of civilizations. I just consider it a philosophy of life to me that is like is inconsistent with, you know, sustainability, and it's a philosophy that carried over that, to me, you know, Native people, when I compare my two backgrounds, it's like, this is the right way. Take your time. You know, life is sacred. Time is sacred. Space is sacred. There's, you know, progress is in your head, right? And think about it. If anything, we've done the opposite of progress. If you look at us as a whole, as a people, we're like a virus. Like, you know,
philosophically, yes.
The Matrix, right? You know, Mr. Anderson. But anyways, so it's a philosophical thing to me.
Yeah, it's a philosophical thing that deals with an entire society that was based in zero spirituality. Without spirituality, no, we only have the 80 years we're going to be here, and we have to get so much done till then.
Yeah.
And we only have the materials that are sitting there, and if nobody else is using the materials, then move them. And so if they've been buried for a while, then nobody's using them, so why do they matter?
Yeah.
But that's only with a fully materialistic view. If you actually include any, like an ounce of spirituality in it, all of a sudden the timeline extends beyond your own life.
Yeah.
As soon as that happens, you can allow for, okay, there's things that are larger than me.
Right. And there's things more important than money. That's the main thing in life.
That's going to be a tough one.
Yeah. Well, when you have none, it's all that matters, right? I mean,
right.
But still, you know, I'll be honest, like when I went to Haiti, right, and I invite anyone to do this, go to a really poor country, spend 6 weeks. Those are the happiest people on the planet Earth, because they don't have all this crap, and they spend all day with their family. It's like, and then I come to America and I'm like, how come they're happier? It's like, what?
What's the disconnect?
Yeah, because we're so worried about all our
There
stuff
is one.
and
Oh, yeah.
keeping up with the Joneses and on and on. It's like, anyways,
Correct.
like right on, Pete.
I'm watching people right now spend their hard-earned savings to keep up with fashionable fences right now.
Oh, fence is a big one, huh?
Construction, yeah, those horizontal fences that are in right now. And homeowner associations are requiring people to do redwood when you can do 2x4 cedar, whatever, doesn't matter, Doug Bird. And right now, prices between redwood and cedar are up 175% from 6 months ago. And they're just trying to keep up with whatever.
Yeah, and then
It's
like
insane.
and the worst part about it is they're putting it on their credit card.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, they had stimulus money a little while ago, not anymore.
Yeah,
No.
it's bananas, dude. It's bananas. The culture and the society we live in, it's bananas. But that's why we need to pick and choose from other cultures and societies and hopefully enrich ours, right? So
Hopefully. Yeah.
And I'll end
All
on
right, cool.
that one. And thanks, Pete. Thanks for the fantastic conversation about fences. It was awesome.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's all I know about.
All right. You too, Spencer, Luis, Marissa, Ian, Eric, Glenn, Jordan. Glad to have you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, you'll like the next one, the next reading, hopefully.